Hey everybody, I'm Lex.
And I'm Tony.
And this is officially the Lex Tony Show.
Welcome.
Finally, we're here coming out with the first episode of the show. And there's so much to discuss. And there's so much excitement for us for starting this. And a lot of you who have been reaching out and asking, when is this going to start? When is the podcast going to come out? Well, it's officially here. And we're happy to release it to the world. I'm an educator turned digital marketer. So I started in the classroom. That's where my career started. And then I turned into digital marketing, which is another passion of mine. And I get to do all the things that I enjoy. This is one of those passion projects that gets me, an opportunity to express myself.
So you tend to be a little more diplomatic.
I'm a little bit more diplomatic. I like to, kind of find a way to connect with most people. I can talk to anybody.
And I'm an engineer into science since I was very young. And I tend to be blunt.
Yeah, he's a little more straightforward. He calls it like it is. I call it like it is, but I find ways to call it like it is while still keeping you in the conversation, Whereas he would just tell us like, this is this. And then, So we have a good way to balance each other out,
Right.
Because I tell him, like, no, you can't say it like that because then people just run away from the conversation. You want to keep them around for a little bit.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Eventually, you get to the part where they may get offended and they walk away, but at least you kept them for a little bit. Or maybe we can share a little bit about our stories. I grew up in a very conservative household. I grew up in the church. I was actually going to be a minister at some point, and I was passionate about my faith. And I'm still passionate about my faith. It's just taking a different form. But, growing up, I always felt the need to censor myself and to downplay certain parts of myself.
To mask.
To mask up and to just, hold back a little bit. And I will be honest, it's something that has been carried through into my adulthood, young adulthood.
It was a very rigorous training, if you think about it.
Yeah, my story. So,
you have to fall in line.
You've also seen the transformation over the years, not so much like I'm a completely different person than I was when I was growing up. I still hold certain things. We have
But you're just more relaxed.
I'm more relaxed and I'm more accepting of the fact that we all are trying to figure this out. We're all trying to figure life out. We're all trying to find ourselves. We're all trying to accept ourselves. And it's a journey. It sounds cliche, but it's true. Every day we find something new about ourselves that we're like, I don't like this. I don't like that. I really like this, but I don't know if people like this about me. And we judge ourselves based on what we think people think about ourselves. And that's something that has been a theme of my life. And I'm sure we'll discuss it at length. And during the show over this first season of the Lex Tony Show. Yes. But what about you? Did you grow up kind of like me, conservative, or were you more kind of like...
I had a very traditional, also conservative upbringing. Obviously in a very homophobic culture, very homophobic society, which is... Nobody thinks of it that way, but that's just how things are.
Right.
Homophobic, racist.
And that's part of the Latino culture, right?
And it is part of the Latino culture, and it's very accepted. The machismo. It's like the man of the house is supposed to be this and that, etc. So, I've been bullied. I would say since I was in second grade, I grew up that way. So those kind of things that make you go like inward. Then I chose a career that I love in science and engineering, and it's also very conservative, male dominated, and you also have to sort of mask up. So it's been a journey, trying to come out and be myself and be able to express myself. And I think this show is part of that.
Yeah, for so long, I felt compelled to say something. About the issues that I care about. In the church, I knew that I had so many gifts that I felt God had given me for graphics, for production, and I wasn't able to fully express them there. I didn't have the space. So this is about making space.
Yes.
We're making a platform for ourselves to speak on the issues that we care about, but this is also about giving other people the spotlight and sharing the spotlight on the things that they're doing for the community, the good things that they're doing for the community.
Right.
And about lifting them up. Every single week, we're going to take the trending topics, whatever people are talking about online, and we'll untangle what's important, what matters.
From what's basically BS.
Yeah, what's basically BS. Things that just are grabbing our attention, but that don't really matter as much as other things. And obviously that's subjective, right? So we'll give our opinions, and we have no shortage of opinions. Sure, we'll talk about the hot topics. That's one aspect of the show. We'll also talk about TV shows and movies that are trending and hot right now, because we love to talk about those shows. We've talked about Barry. We talked about Beef.
Black Mirror.
Black Mirror, which we haven't started watching the new season.
We have to, and we will share what we learned. I've heard it's really good.
Yeah, so we're excited about that because we talked about Black Mirror. There's also Succession that ended just recently, which is, a great show. Has many good moments and many things to talk about. So we'll talk about shows. We'll talk about trending topics. We'll have interviews with people who are making a difference in the communities. Up and coming artists.
Yes.
Also. So we have some things lined up for those people.
Some amazing people that are just I love it. They're just emerging into the community or into the art space, and they're just I'm in awe of what they will be doing in the future. And we'll also bring some topics that we can see that are covered in the media, but that somehow miss the humanity.
Right. Even when there's stories that are being covered that are serious and important, like the submarine story, which took the whole week last week and into this week, actually. It's an ongoing thing. I think they're going to even make a documentary.
Oh, I'm sure there are movies coming out.
Yeah. And then the other story, which I'm sure many of you have heard, because President Obama brought attention to it, by the way, because he was in Greece. It was the 500 immigrants who died in the coast. They were being smuggled, right, into the country, and including children, whole families.
There were hundreds of children.
So we had two stories where people died. We had the submarine folks that were missing for a few days. The Navy already knew that the submarine had already imploded, so they kind of knew from the get-go that this was over, but yet we still paid attention to the details trickling in for a whole week.
And the entire, coverage, the aerial coverage, all the boats,
the models, and everything.
The boats,
right?
Searching and scavenging the sea and everything, all of that for, 5 rich people.
Right. And it's not to say that their lives are not important, but obviously we have 500 people over here that died, and they got maybe a couple of days of coverage. And a lot of people are even justifying the fact that it wasn't covered. But it brings to attention the subject of immigration to me. And this is something that is a hot button issue on our show as well, because it's something that's relevant to us here in the state of Florida. If you've been tuning into our pilots for the past few weeks, we have been talking about immigration and the rallies and the protests that have been taking place here in Florida. Protests that we've taken part in.
And this is because of the new laws that are about to kick in on July 1st that are aimed at immigrants, basically with the purpose of making them invisible or disappear. They will be denied service, they will be denied health care, they will be denied work, they will not be able to drive, they will basically be asked to disappear and get out of sight.
Right, because this is an issue that has been politicized regarding immigration, but that there are no real solutions being proposed. It's all about pitting people against each other and targeting a group of people. I think in order to have a conversation about immigration with all the facts, we need to have the perspective of an immigrant. Their experience, their lived experience. And we need to listen to their lived experience, their story.
Yes.
And so that's why we brought Felipe. Not only because he is a leader and an impressive person at that. He's so committed to this cause.
Absolutely.
He is everywhere that you see a rally, a protest, a march, he's there. And he's speaking on the mic, and he's giving voice to the voiceless, the people that are not able to go up there and speak. And he's doing it in Spanish, and he's doing it in English, and he's doing it in Portuguese. He's a brilliant man, and we wanted to interview people that are in touch with the issues and are in the trenches advocating for the immigrant community. As a matter of fact, in this first episode, we'll feature a portion of the interview that I had with Felipe Sousa-Lazaballet, who is the executive director of the Hope Community Center.
His voice is on our trailer where he says,
yes,
it is a time of crisis, but it's also a time of opportunity.
Yeah, that is a huge theme for what we're talking about here.
So it is. I love what you just said now about, there's a chance for us to speak and listen to everybody. That is a great opportunity. Yes, there is an immigration crisis for sure. There's a lot of people dying. It is a crisis.
Yes.
But there's also an opportunity for us to connect with people and learn about them and be more in touch with our humanity.
We'll start with the first few questions that I asked Felipe. We started back in his childhood and going into young adulthood and how he became an activist, something that he maybe didn't plan out from the get-go, but something he had to do because he couldn't wait for somebody else to do it for him. Take a look at the first installment of his interview with me here in the studio, in the Lex Tony Show studio. Hi, I'm Lex, and I'm here with Felipe. He is a leader in our community, and I'm really honored to have him here today to speak on the things that he's doing in the community, the things that he sees, his vision for the community, and the efforts that you're coalescing the community to bring together, and bring attention to the causes that matter to today's Florida. And for hopefully a better tomorrow for Florida. Oh my God. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I'm really honored to have you. I was an elementary school teacher. So anytime I see adults, I like to see their younger selves, or at least imagine their younger selves. So I guess I'd like to ask you, what did little Felipe want to be when they grew up?
Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
I wanted to work at McDonald's so I could have free burgers. Then I wanted to be president of Brazil.
Okay.
I wanted to be an ambassador on other point. But I got to the U.S. when I was 14. So,
okay. And
yeah.
What brought you here? Because you came alone, as I understand.
Yes. Well, so when I was about 8 years old, my older sister decided that she was going to break the chains of poverty. And she felt like we were in a cycle of poverty, right? Our family was really low income. We lived in the outskirts of Rio. And she said, enough is enough. She saved money and got herself a plane ticket, was able to get to the US. And when she got here, she only had $50 left. Wow. Which she says that she bought cookies with it.
Oh, that's what she decided to buy, cookies.
Yes, and she made flyers so she could pass it around in the neighborhood, that she could clean homes and take care of kids and stuff like that. Okay. So, but before she left, she told me, okay, look, Felipe, I'm leaving, but by the time you're 15, I'm bringing you to the US because I want you to have opportunities. I want you to learn English. I want you to go to an American school. And she did. She fulfilled her promise.
Wow. How did your family feel about this? Was this because she had already told you this, they were prepared for this big shift and this change for you to come to the States? Were they supportive?
I don't know if they were prepared, right? Like, there isn't really a way to prepare a mom to leave their, basically send their kid away, right? In that way. The way they reacted was, wow, here's an opportunity for Felipe to succeed, to have dreams that would have been impossible for him. We went to the American consulate and asked for a tourist visa. Okay. I said that I was going to Disney World. Okay.
Of course, everybody goes to Disney.
Yes. And very stereotypically Brazilian too, right? So, we were able to get a visa. These were over 20 years ago, right? And at the time, there weren't that many kids that were coming by themselves. So they thought, okay, there is no way he's leaving to come live in the United States. But that's what I was doing. And, that was sort of like a process, right, of saying goodbye. And it felt like I was coming to a different planet. And we didn't know when we would see each other again. But I remember the last time that we were together with my family at the airport. My mom gave me a huge hug. And then she looked me in the eye and said, look, if they ask you, you have to say that you're going to Disney World. Okay. She said, you have to be strong. You're going to have to get in this plane by yourself. And you're going to have to explain this to immigration when you get to the US.
Right.
So I got in the plane. It was like 8-hour flight, and I cried the whole way. And I didn't know one word of English. I didn't know how to say hi. I also didn't know any Spanish, right? I only knew Portuguese. And upon arrival, right, I went through immigration on my own, and they asked me questions in English. I did not understand. Then they changed it to Spanish. I couldn't understand either. And I got flustered. I probably was like red, right? And then I remember my mom, and then I said, Mickey Mouse.
Aww, Mickey Mouse.
And
yeah.
they stepped my passport and let me inside the country.
Okay.
Yes.
So that was the magic word.
Mickey Mouse is my hero.
Protect Mickey Mouse at all costs.
Yes.
He was there for you.
He was always there for me.
And your sister was waiting for you, I'm assuming.
Yeah,
just outside.
she was waiting for me, and took me to the house, to her house, her apartment. And you know, for years, she, you know, typical immigrant story, came from nothing, built a business, but she worked all the time.
Right.
And I took care of my niece, who was really little at the time.
Okay.
So I would wake up, take care of my niece, take her to the bus for her to go to kindergarten. Then I would go to school, and leave school, go pick up my niece, and take care of her the whole day.
What was your experience the first day of school when you went to school? Do you remember?
I do remember. I remember like it was yesterday. I arrived at the school, and it was, you know, I essentially got enrolled, and then on that same day they took me to the classroom. So I arrived, didn't know one word of English, right? Again, and they do like a test, right? An ISO test to see what level you're in. And my sister said, you know, don't worry about it. Like, put him at number 1 or 0 if there is one, because he doesn't know any English. So they took me to the class and gave me my schedule, but I didn't know that you have to go from class to class, because in Brazil it's the contrary. The teachers rotate, not the students.
Okay.
Also, I went to a school that didn't have air conditioning. We were like 50 kids stuffed in one classroom, just a little window. It was so hot.
Oh my
This is like
gosh.
Rio de Janeiro hot, right?
Yeah.
And I'm in the school that you need a sweater because of the
It's cold.
air conditioning. It's
Yeah.
cold inside.
Yeah.
It was such a huge culture shock. So when they took me to a classroom on a portable tour, right, outside the building, and gave me my schedule and said, okay, you're here, right? So I was in the class. It was like a math class.
Okay.
Then after the bell rang, I saw everyone leaving, but I stayed. And the teacher tried to tell me, you have to go to your next class. And I thought that I got in trouble, and I cried. And then I remembered, more or less based on, sort of like the turns I made, how to get back to the main office, and used my Portuguese and English dictionary and highlighted the word lost.
Oh.
And then they took me to the next class.
How long did you think that it took for you to kind of assimilate and just feel like you arrived? Because I experienced that similar experience of not knowing where I was, not knowing the language. How long did it take you to feel like I've arrived, I'm here, and I feel at home somewhat?
I think it was a year. I don't know exactly how I learned English, other than one day I woke up and I felt like I was understanding people.
Okay.
And that was a turning point, right? Because I could communicate. I also learned Spanish because I grew up in Miami, and absolutely everyone speaks Spanish, right? So I learned Spanish quickly, which gave me a bunch of other tools to, survive and succeed, make friends. And after a year, I just didn't want to go back anymore. So for an entire year, I wanted to go back to Brazil. I missed my mom.
Of course.
I missed everything, and I just felt really isolated. But once I knew English, it was, like I was unleashed.
How did you stay in touch with your mom?
At that time, calling was really expensive, right? So we would only call each other once a week. And I would write letters for her.
Tell me a little bit more about like how you transitioned from that stage of your life, kind of fast forwarding a little bit more to when you became not just an observer, right, but an active participant of your school activities, extracurriculars? Were you involved in any sports? How did you become more, you were able to flourish a little bit more in your personality and yourself?
I got into the magnet school for theater, right?
Okay.
Which I don't even know how. I had a super thick accent, right? But I got into mime and writing plays.
Okay.
So I got into it, which opened up like a whole community for me. And then also the other thing that happened was right around like the end of 10th grade, beginning of 11th grade, was when I became really aware that I was undocumented and what that meant. So on 10th grade, like they have you take the health class, which is just half of credit, and usually you get driver's ed right after. But I didn't have papers, so I couldn't go to driver's ed because I couldn't get a driver's license.
Got it.
And that really hurt me in a very profound way. It made me feel very othered. And I realized for the first time then that I was going to have a very different set of opportunities than everyone else around me. So I confided in my ESO teacher and told her, Miss Perez, I'll never forget. And I, and I was crying and I told her, look, I don't know. I'm not going to be able to go to college. What am I going to do? And she researched, went home, researched, came back and said, have you heard about the DREAM Act? So I read it, right? And then started organizing in a clandestine way.
Yes.
Phone calls to Congress.
Okay.
During school for the DREAM Act. So I, that was kind of like the beginning of my activism too.
Okay. So you had a cell phone and you made your calls. How did you make the calls?
I would ask other people who had cell phones to let me use their cell phones.
Okay. Was it back when the prepaid, so you used their minutes for a good cause?
Yes, exactly.
Awesome. So you had a good group of friends that knew about your status, or how did you have that conversation with friends that may not have even known what that meant?
I didn't really tell people that I didn't have papers, right? I told a few people. I told my theater teacher and I told Miss Perez, the ESO teacher, right? And that's it. But I would just talk to every day to the students in the school and say, hey, like there are immigrant youth who can't go to school. This is not fair.
Yeah.
And, convince them, and it worked.
Great. So you had a coalition of people already starting a coalition at that age. When did you transition from telling people on a one-to-one basis to speaking about it publicly and sharing your story in a way that prompted you closer to feeling safe? Because I'm sure that all those years you felt unsafe.
Yeah. Well, I graduated from high school in 2005, and I couldn't go to college, and that broke my heart, and I felt so incredibly hurt, and I thought, quite honestly, even a little betrayed by the promise of if you work hard, all your dreams can come true, So, for a year or so, I was sort of lost, working under the table, doing what I could. And because of a friend of a church in the church that I used to go to, he told me, I heard from a cousin of the cousin of the cousin. I mean, this is a long time ago,
right?
Like there weren't.
Give us a time frame so we can have a kind of a.
So this is in 2005, right? Between 2005 and 2006, when the networks for undocumented youth didn't exist, and especially because I also identify as queer, I was trying to figure that out at the same time, right? And this friend of mine knew I didn't have papers and found a way for me to get a private scholarship to start at Miami-Dade College in the honors college because I had good grades. So I applied, I got in, and began to go to school, right? And that same friend told me, hey, I heard on the radio that there is a rally about immigrant rights. Do you want to come? Let's go together. He was trying to build a network because I was really depressed. And I did. And I remember like it was yesterday, I think there were like 5,000 people in Miami chanting "Si se puede," right? Right. And there was a shift in my mind, right? I am not alone. There is a way that we can fight for this. So I was watching TV, like all of this is happening sort of like that. This is why you just never know the impact, right, that your actions could have on other people's lives, right? This is all happening around me and I was reacting to it, right? So I decided that I wanted to be SJ president.
Did you? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Because that was a way to advocate for the DREAM Act. I needed to get a bigger platform. I'm going to do this. So I ran and won. So I was the student government president for the Wolfson campus at Miami-Dade College. Wow. And that year was also the year that the president of the Wolfson campus would also be the student representative in the board of trustees of the college. So I got all of these things and I said, okay, I am going to advocate for the DREAM Act. And I watched, on TV about a young guy just like myself that was getting deported, and his high school rallied around him and stopped his deportation. His name is Juan Gomez. Wow. So I was inspired, right? So I called the director of government affairs at Miami-Dade College and said, okay, I want to advocate for the DREAM Act. What should I do? And she said, you should talk to Maria Rodriguez at the Florida Immigrant Coalition. So I called and said, I want to get involved. And they sent a community organizer to talk to me to have a 101. Okay. And instead, when he said, oh, I'm going to have a meeting, right? I prepare a meeting for like 50 people. And when he arrived, I had all these people and he was not expecting all of that. But that's how I got involved, right? And just like most people, I was afraid still, which I think it's really important to underline, right? That it wasn't like I was born this, like someone who's fearless and ready to fight. No, I was afraid. I was a young person who was directly impacted by an injustice, and I wanted to get involved, and I just didn't know how.
One of the things, or a few themes that stand out to me with what I'm hearing is allyship, right? Those allies that maybe even not knowing let you borrow the phone, and you were able to make those phone calls, that that then got to know you better and connected you with opportunities to call people and network. So the power of allyship, the power of taking action despite the risks, and the courage that it requires to be able to do those things. Do you think that without the allyships and the connections that any of this story would be possible where you are today? And the reason why I ask that is because maybe people are afraid as allies to take action, even in their privilege, to be able to make a difference for someone that they know personally. What would you say to people who may be afraid, and how much of a difference it made in your life to facilitate where you are now?
It made a world of difference. I would not be here today if it weren't for the people who stood with me, and with me, as the word here, not for me, sure, or my behalf, but with me,
you, next to you,
in a journey of empowerment, a journey of overcoming, both in very tactical ways, like here's this scholarship you could apply to. I did all this research for you. There's this thing called the DREAM Act, right? Giving me hope when I felt at my lowest. And it would be impossible for me to be here today. And for the thousands of undocumented youth who took risk and inspired me to also, join the ranks, basically.
On the next episode of the Lex Tony Show.
Okay, so there's definitely a sign of God. The universe is telling me something. What do you think I should do? And she said, let's ask God for a sign. I started crying, right?
Makes me want to cry now. It's beautiful. Yeah.